Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. I'll be speaking in English, but I will also summarize in Somali. That's what my topic is going to be. And for those who have been listening to the story, the real true story of the real people that have struggled against, I don't call Ethiopia, Ethiopia. That's called Abyssinia. Okay, because when you call them Ethiopia, if you look at the academic papers, there is nothing called Ethiopia. It was created in 1900, okay, is when the story of Ethiopia came. But it is always Abyssinia. And the people we're fighting are not the Ethiopian people. We're fighting the Abyssinians. And the Abyssinians are two communities, as you will see. But as a Somali, and as a proud Somali, I would have to say, it is not only the Somalis in the Ogaden that are buried in the Ogaden. There are a lot of international treaties that also happen to be buried with our struggle. And that is what I am proud of. And because I am in a university, I will give you two books. There is a recent book that was written by Professor Woodruff Louise. And I will give, if you come later, I'll give you the exact spelling. Professor Woodruff wrote a book in 2013. I believe she's at Yale. And the book is called Buried in the Sands of the Ogaden. There was a strategic treaty that was called Strategic Arms Reduction and Limitation Treaty, SALT, or what is called SALT II. John F. Kennedy started in the 1960s to get that treaty between NATO, mainly Americans, and the Warsaw that was led by the Russians. For 16 years, the United States of America was trying to convince the Russians to agree to an arms reduction. But because of the Ogaden struggle, it's today buried in there. And those are the words of the former National Security Advisor of the Carter administration, somebody that's dear to the Ogaden and the Somali struggle. He's the only individual that supported the Somalis in 1977, when everybody else in the US government did not want to support the Somalis and their struggle in what is known as the Ogaden War, or the War of 1977. That is Mr. Perchineski, and I'm not very good at saying words, but he's a famous national security advisor. And there is another book that was written by a professor, an Amhara professor. That book is called Ethiopian Revolutions, War in the Horn of Africa. It was written in 2014 or 2013. And the professor's name is Gebru Tareke. Please take a look at those two books, and specifically, not the Somalis from the Ogaden, the Somalis from Somalia proper. You will see when the Somalis were real Somalis, when the United States of America, the presidential briefings, the briefings that the United States president gets every day, was mentioning the Somalis, the Somali leaders that we had, and asking, what do the Somalis think about the African issue? That's what we used to be. And today people tell you, okay, what does General Gabre say about? Does he agree with me? How low can we go? How low can we go? Siad Barre passed away. No matter what he was a hero. Read the papers. He was a hero for the Somali struggle. He was also a hero for what I call the African struggle. That is why in the 70s, in the 60s, the United States of America is asking for the advice of what the Americans should do about the Angola, what they should do about Rhodesia, modern day Zimbabwe. And today, the US is asking the advice of the Ethiopians about Somalia. How low can we get? We got to move up. If we're Somalis, we have to get back to being real Somalis. And the word African, that is what the Somalis used to be. We were struggling for the Africans. And the Africans who are here, either African Americans or Africans from Africa, one day we will stand together and we will ask you, when the Somalis needed you, where have you been? But when you needed the Somalis, we were there. So my topic is what I am calling Abyssinia, the black sheep in the African family. And I mean every word of it. And I'm proud to say every word of it. And through my thesis tonight, you will see why Abyssinia is a black mark in the African continent, in the African American struggle. Okay, let's get started. I have been introduced. I will give you what I call a 1-minute geography of Abyssinia, the Ogaden, and Ethiopia. 1-minute geography. That's what I will start with, so that we know who the players are. Okay? And then I will give you a profile of the Ogaden Somalis as well as the Abyssinians. Who am I talking about? Am I talking about a tribe? Am I talking about a nation? Am I talking about a place? Then I will get to the meat and the potatoes of my talk, which is how did Africans, an African country, end up collecting African colonies? Okay? And then genocide by another name. Genocide is not something that started. In the 1900s, in the Ogaden, in Somalia proper, it wasn't genocide. They used to call it military expedition, which is the same as a war crime. So I will give you an example, a witness, not by myself, not a Somali, but a witness, a British consul of what used to be the British Protectorate. And the whole area that, a colleague of mine was mentioning, that is where the British consulate was. And people may say, okay, Mohamed, you're talking about 1800. We are in 20th century, 21st century, 1800, there was no airplanes. Okay, there was no internet. There was no automobile. Okay, for those, then I have an example from 2008, just to show you why the Abyssinians never progress. Never. Why the Ogaden struggle. Why we're still struggling. Okay? And it will be a genocide by another name. Then, I'll give you an example of what is today passing as a development in the Ogaden. I'll give you 2 examples. One is an example from a British traveler. When people used to travel, not to resorts, but real travel, living with the people, walking among the people, and learning about the people. And that British traveler story is from 1898. Someone may say, okay, that's an old time. Okay, great. I'll give you an example from an American traveler, what he has seen in the Ogaden. And if you substitute the words, you will exactly be talking about the same thing, 114 years apart. That is how much progress the Abyssinians have made in the Ogaden. Okay? I'm not going to stop there. I will give you the only first-hand account of what my colleague was just talking about you. Our mother, the mother of the struggle. An American a journalist from the New York Times was the first and the last independent journalist from the West that has actually set foot in the Ogaden. And we will talk about, he will explain to you exactly what the mother of the struggle was talking about. First-hand account. Then people may say, okay, you know what, now we have a new regime. We have so-called democracy in Ethiopia. Okay, great, I agree with you. If you think there's democracy, I will give you examples. Not from when the so-called Democrats came to power, which was 1991. I'm going to give them 11 years because they're always 5 years behind the wall. So I'll give them 5 years plus 6, 11 years. So 11 years for them to put their act together, but I'm going to give you what the human rights situation is. Not from me, not from an academic, but from 3 sources. Number 1, the State Department, the Bureau of Democracy, Human Rights, and Labor. And I'll give you a comparative examples. What did they say in their report about Ethiopia and the Ogaden in 2011? 11 years after the so-called Democrats have come to power. And in case you think things have changed, I'll give you the same report from 2015 that was published just a month ago. That's from one source. The second source is the country report by Human Rights Watch from 2011 and again from 2015. It was published in April 2016. That's how current it is. And I have chosen those examples because both those years happen to be right after they have had what they call so-called elections. Okay? And surprise, surprise, have you ever seen an election where you win 100% of the vote? Great. That's what we call dictatorship. Okay? But why I chose those examples is because after the election, at least whoever won the election is in euphoria. They're still high. And at least that's when you would expect them at least to be lenient, to at least look forward instead of looking back. But you'll see that nothing has changed. And nothing changes when it comes to Abyssinia. There's nothing new. Okay? You may say, okay, that's 2015, 2011, but that's a long time ago. Great, I agree with you. I'm going to give you examples from 2016. Okay? And you look at, you take the headlines, you will think you're talking about 1892. That's how much progress or no progress there has been. Okay? When genocide happened in 2008, 1892, what did the world community do? What did the Africans do? I'll give you that. Okay? And I will provide, as a professor, I am not a professor today because today I am busy doing my consulting work, but when I was teaching in the classroom, I cannot allow a student to talk about a problem without bringing their perspective on a solution. So I will provide proposals on how we can deal with the black sheep in the African community. African Americans, Africans from Africa, Somalis, whoever you are, how can we remove this black sheep? And I would have to provide you the work cited. What sources have I used? Let's get started. And you will have time for questions and comments. Okay, this one, introductions. I'm not a professional human rights activist. I am just an IT guy. I'm an information professional who happens to have an interest in the socio-economic and the multiple fabric of the Ogaden and Ethiopian region. Okay. So Abyssinia, where am I talking about? This is exactly what I'm talking about. Ethiopia is a modern day creation. So the Ogaden is right there. Okay, Oromia is right there. On the top you have Amhara, and Abyssinia is the red line. Those are the highlanders. The Amhara and the Tigray are called those are called Abyssinians. That is all what used to be Ethiopia. Sorry, Abyssinia. And these people want to rule this entire people, from the southern peoples, nations and nationalities, from the Afar, from the Oromo, from the Eritrea, and from the Ogaden. Okay? So that is what I mean by Abyssinian, Ogaden, and Ethiopia geography in a minute. Okay? Hopefully we're clear. Now you may tell me who are Ogaden Somalis. I'm referring to the Somalis in the Ogaden region, not the tribe that happens to be living there as well, among the other Somali tribes. Okay, who are the Ogadens? We're ethnically Somalis, we're nomads, and we're very proud of that. Okay? We have never been integrated in the present day Ethiopia, never. Okay? We're not represented in the Ethiopian central government and its many organs in any meaningful way. And the Somalis today, Somalia is a failed state. But guess what? The Somalis in the Ogaden today, they still trade with the Somali nation, and the Somali shilling is still in use, not the Ethiopian birr. And who are the Abyssinians? According to Mr. Geschächter, he is writing on the anti-colonialism and class formation, the Eastern Horn of Africa before the 1950s. Abyssinia refers to the physical entity in the highlands. The difference between them and us is they have a lot of water. We're a semi-arid place. That's why they don't have camels. We have camels. Okay? And if you want to know, someone once said, if you want to know the border, where the the Ogaden border stops and where the Abyssinian border starts, he said you follow the camel. Wherever the camel stops, and the camel cannot go there, because if it is wet, the camel cannot live there. That's why you don't see a lot of camel in the Kismayo area, in the Juba, lower Juba, because there is a lot of insects that it cannot handle. It needs a dry place. Okay? So that physical entity in the highlands is called Abyssinia. They are dominated culturally and politically by Somalis are Muslims. These guys are Orthodox Christians, and they are Semitic speaking Amhara and Tigray. Just two communities. How can two communities who happen to be 15 million in total, how can they rule 200 million years, an entire 80 million nation? It's impossible. Okay? And now, they used to be ruled by an aristocratic and ecclesiastical hierarchy based in Gondar. That's what I was showing you, a Showan. It used to be called the Showan, the Showans. Okay? So that's the profile of Abyssinians, and that's the profile of the Ogaden Somalis. Those are the two main players I'll be talking about. Okay. Now, African colony, you may be asking, how did this, another African tribe, how did they collect these colonies? The Ogaden, the Oromo, the Afar, how did they collect them? Okay? Through armed conquest. In other words, by force. What else did they do? Professor Woolbert, he said, the technique of Showan or Abyssinian expansion was what he used to call atypically African. What does an African do? They're going to bring their camels or their cattle closer to where you graze. Okay? They're going to fight. And if you move, guess what? They're going to stay there. Now it's their land. And then next month, they're going to move again. But The Ogaden Somalis, they never moved. They stopped there. That's why they fight. Otherwise, that's how they will expand. So what did they used to do? Okay, they, non-Christian people, that's very important. They used to periodically raid them. The cattle, they'll take the cattle, the grain, the slaves, and other useful property. Okay? And they're going to destroy life and property. Everything. Guess what happened then? As a result, what's going to happen? Okay? Mr. Holocomb and Ipsa, he noted that the entire Ogaden region, fighting, push and pull. Eventually, they have taken over the entire region in 1897. And then guess what happened? Now they justified. Do you need a treaty with the white man in order to justify that the land is yours? No. But you need the treaty with the white man, the British in this case, because for them to justify a land that's not yours. So there used to be, if you now argue with an Abyssinian, or say, this is not your land, they will say, oh, you look back at what is called Anglo-Ethiopia Treaty of 1897. I don't care about a treaty. I know it's my land. That's why I'm fighting until today. And I will fight until the cows come home. So that is how an African ended up collecting a number of colonies. We weren't alone. They did the same to the Oromos, the Sidamo, the Afar. And now, after the 1897, that's when they changed the name from Abyssinia to Ethiopia. Because now they have to justify that we are a group together. Because if they say Abyssinia, everybody knows Abyssinia is Amhara and Tigray. Okay? Okay. Genocide. I like comparative analysis. Okay? This is what the British consul reported in 1892. Okay? A large Abyssinian expedition has returned from the Ogaden expedition. Okay? That's what they used to do. They have to collect all their military and fight you. Okay, what did they do? They bring the booty. Thousands of camels, cattle, property of all descriptions. I hear from the sources that they have devastated the people. Isn't that genocide? Exactly. That's genocide. That's 1892. 5 years before they signed a treaty in order to take the land. Okay? Many people are dying of starvation. And an epidemic said to be cholera, but which may be starvation fever. That's exactly what the mother was talking about. 1892, 115 years if my math is correct, before even the airplanes were invented. I came from Toronto, flew from Toronto to here, an hour and 15 minutes. Airplane was not existing when this was happening in the Ogaden. That is why I'm struggling. And that is why I'll continue to struggle for my land. Okay? And that starvation fever has broken out and carried off numerous victims daily. Who are the perpetrators? The British consul is very clear. This state of affairs is attributed entirely to the conduct of the Abyssinian soldiers, who eat up everything. That's genocide in 1892. Okay, let's say, oh, that was Menelik II. Let's go, that's Haile Selassie, before Haile Selassie. That's before everybody, before Mengistu, the Red Oketera. Okay, great. Guess what? Now you have Democrats, right? You shouldn't expect the same thing to happen. And I'm going to give them 7 years for them to put their acts together. Look at what Human Rights Watch said in 2008. During the peak of the army counterinsurgency campaign. I'm going to stop there and explain what the counterinsurgency was. The Chinese tried to go to the Ogaden to prospect for oil in 2007. They were given the best grazing land, where they cleared the land and they displaced entire communities. The Chinese thinking, okay, the Ogadens will lie down. They never read the history. Okay? Ogaden National Liberation Front warned them. They said, the Abyssinians cannot protect you. Okay? You got to move. Guess what they did? They refused. And what every self-justifiable armed struggle will do, they captured the entire camp. The Chinese included, and the Abyssinians ran away. Okay, now the Melet Zenawi was really now pissed off. He said, oh, how come I cannot handle ONLF? He had counterinsurgency. Okay, at the peak of that, this is what he was doing. They have forcibly displayed entire rural communities, destroyed rural villages, executed. Isn't that exactly, the emphasis is mine, what the British consul is talking about in 1892? Okay? They have arbitrarily detained hundreds of civilians in military barracks, where they experience beatings, torture, and widespread rape and other forms of sexual violence. Isn't that what the mother has had a first account? That is why what we say is not, we just say it. This is the evidence. And what the Human Rights Watch, they did, they took satellites, commercial satellites, and they show you, if you look at the report, I'll give you the link, they will show you entire districts before and after. So that no one can claim, okay, the Ethiopians cannot claim, oh no, this didn't happen. Okay? That is about 100 plus years. Okay? That's an African doing to another African. Okay? Colonizing them and not being successful at that. I wouldn't mind if somebody colonized me, but at least gives me roads, gives me schools. But look at this, 100 plus years, it's the same. And this is their failure. They don't change their tactic. Ogaden Somalis are not going to, okay, it doesn't matter how many you kill. It doesn't matter how many you torture. We're here. And we're going to stay until the cows come home. Someone may say, okay, you know what, this is history. Okay, 2008, that's 8 years before now. Okay, can we move on? Great. Yes, we can. Have things changed? You be the witness. Okay? This is British Traveller. Okay? This is what passes as a development in the Ogaden. Okay? Look what he's saying. They came across nothing but a depression in the bush of some 2.5 acres that holds the stagnant water of the last rainy season till the middle of January, after which it's usually dry. That's what the people are going to drink. That's what the people are going to cook with. That's what the people are going to let their animals, cattle, goats, and camel drink from that same water. Guess what? Okay, there were some 400 camels. No, at Daror, the place is Daror, we found about 3 inches of slimy water, round which the rare Ali Ogaden, sick, that's a bad spelling, had their careers. There were some 400 camels standing in the pool. Natives wading it, women washing their toes. And our delight at seeing the water was somewhat tempered when we realized that for many days to come, we should have to drink and cook with it. That is water in the Ogaden. Okay? In 1898. Okay, you will say, and I will give you the credit for it. Okay, this is 100 plus years. Can we move on? We have Democrats. We have democracy, so-called democracy. We have multi-party. Great. That was a British. It's not going to come from me. An American. A very adventurous American went to a place called Danaan. Danaan is not far from Daror. Same area, close by. What did he see? Okay. Here is what he saw. You could literally take the words and take those words, put it in here, or take this one from here, 100 plus years, and it's exactly the same. What did he see? 2 little girls are gathering water far side of the oversized puddle of a pond. Now he's using puddle of a pond, and this one was what? Okay, that was a bush of some 2.5 acres holds the stagnant water. Same thing. The world has progressed. Where are the Ethiopians or the Abyssinians? Why did they not progress? Okay, look at what is happening. They're dipping their containers in the brown water. Okay, so they go. Soon, the cattle crest a small rise behind the puddle of bone. They will tumble down the sand and into the water, gulping up water as soon as they enter. That's the water they drink, 2008. That's the water the Ogaden Somalis were drinking in 1898. You tell me, you call that progress? I call that a failed African experiment in colonization, colonizing another African. At least they should learn. They never learn. Okay? And if you want to get a picture, that's exactly the picture in Danang in 2008. That's the water that she's taking home to cook and clean, and as soon as they're done, the cows are coming. Okay? And anyone today tells me, oh yeah, okay, they build a bridge, they build a road. That's exactly what is in there. You go find it for yourself. Okay? Okay? Now let's move on. Okay, you may say, you know what? Give me a journalist's account. Because the Ethiopians never allow any journalist. It's a closed military zone. One end they say, oh, there's a progress. If you made progress, shouldn't you show off? Yes, if I am making progress, I will make sure everybody knows. Yeah, when I got my master's degree, I was so proud. I want to show even my 2-year-old. Okay? That's a human nature. They don't allow anybody to go to the Ogaden. And that should tell you a reason for it. Okay? But leaders of Africa advocating for those downtrodden. And now, how did the Africans repay the debt? Nothing. They send their troops not to defend the Somalis, but to make money out of it. Okay? So that is where the Somalis ended up. That's where we ended up. If you were to support the Ogaden Somalis, and don't forget, the Somali nation was destroyed because of your support of the Ogaden Somalis in 1977. Okay? What's the last point? Let's revive the spirit of Martin Luther King Jr. What did he say? Injustice anywhere is a threat to justice everywhere. Mantra. Let's revive that. Let's end the injustice in the Ogaden, in Oromo, Sidamo, anywhere else. And let us put the misery out of the Abyssinians. Let them go back to their highlanders because they have failed to control people, to colonize people. I will be remiss if I have not provided you the work cited. Okay? So the work cited are there. And if you have any comments or questions, welcome.